You are listening to episode number 55 of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the question, are you ready for storm season? It's right around the corner, so are you? We're also going to talk about some upcoming events and contests, as well as some hamfests for the next 2 weeks, and wrap it all up with some news from around the hobby. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and this is episode number 55. Today we're going to be talking about the question, are you ready for storm season? You know, storm season is fastly approaching, and you know, depending on what or where you live at is the kind of storms that you can be expecting. You know, here in Texas, we're starting up severe weather season. You know, tornadoes, severe weather outbreaks, severe thunderstorms, all that good stuff. You know, up along the Central Plains, they're looking at tornadoes. You know, along the East Coast here in a couple months, you're going to be looking at hurricane season. So, all this stuff is fastly approaching, and typically right around the late part of January, early February, or something like that is really when everybody starts to gear up for things. And I'm talking like, you know, storm spotter school, right? Everybody needs to take this, and it's a requirement that you take it at least once every 2 years or so. So this is the perfect opportunity to do it. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about some things that you should do in preparation for it, things you need to check out, stuff like that. And yeah, so we're going to get started with that here in just a little bit. But first off, I want to announce our winner of the N3FJP Software Package. So without further ado, the winner is Alan Meeker, KM4ZLD. Is Kilo Mike 4 Zulu Lima Delta. Congratulations, Alan, on winning the software package. If you will please shoot me an email at k5clm@everythinghamradio.com with your name and address and all that good stuff. I will get you set up so you can get that downloaded. Again, congratulations. Please shoot me that email so I can confirm you're winning. I still have not heard back from our winner of our ebooks from KB6NU. So, if the winner of that will please shoot me an email as well. So Eric Broyles, KJ4KEU, please shoot me an email, k5clm@everythinghamradio.com, and give me that information as well to confirm your winning, and I will get you hooked up with Dave Romanchek to get that to you. So yeah, that's pretty much all. So congratulations to all of our winners that we've had so far. Alrighty, I'm trying to add a little extra sound effects here. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I'm trying to kind of liven it up a little bit. Yeah, so anyways, before we go any further, if you have not done so, please subscribe to my email list. You can do that at everythinghamradio.com/subscribe, or simply go to the sign up form at the bottom of the show notes of today's episode, which can be found at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/55. There's a whole bunch of extra show notes on there, as well as links to everything we're going to talk about. And each one of the items that we're going to be talking about on preparing or making sure that you have, if you follow my recommendations, there will be links in the show notes of today's episode to Amazon for each of the items that you can get, in anything that you buy. I'll get a small affiliate. My mind just went blank here. Affiliate income for that, I guess you could say. Again, you will not notice any difference in the price, but I'll get a small, basically, finder's fee. Also, speaking of finder's fee, if you would like to help support this podcast, there are several ways you can do it. You can make a one-time contribution to it through PayPal. You can become a Patreon on patreon.com, and there's a link on my website for that, or you can simply shop through Amazon using my affiliate link. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and talk about that wonderful question. Are you ready for storm season? Okay, so the question that you really have to ask yourself is, are you ready? Now, there's several things that you should do before a storm hits, really. I mean, there's several items that you should check. There's several, you need to check your batteries. You need to check several things. We're going to talk about those in today's episode. Now, as a Skywarn spotter for, oh goodness, going on 15, 20 years now or so, I've done some things, I've not done some things, and I've regretted it. So I always want to make sure that you're ready, and I would even venture to say overly ready when it comes to, basically putting your life in danger, because that's really what you're doing. I mean, you're putting yourself out there in the middle of nowhere sometimes, in a place where you could potentially, heaven forbid, get hit by a tornado or, massive hailstorm or something like that. So you always want to make sure that you're prepared. And first and foremost, the thing that you need to make sure that you do is you need to get training on this. And like I said, there's the National Weather Service puts on Skywarn training every year. And pretty much every county that I know of, or at least, in every major area, here we have pretty much one every week or so, from about the 1st of February or so until the middle of May. So first off, make sure that you're trained. Make sure that you know what you're looking for, and make sure that you do it right. And in order to do that, you have to know what you're doing. So, and secondly, if you are new to this, make sure that you find us a spotting buddy, because it's not always easy to do it by yourself, and really it's not even recommended to do it by yourself. You should always have somebody driving and somebody that is spotting. So my wife and I typically do that, or at least we used to until we had 4 kids or 5 kids or whatever, however many we have when you listen to this episode. Right now we have 4. So yeah, make sure that you double up if at all possible. And first off, let me say that this episode is not about storm chasing, right? I'm not talking about, actually going out and chasing a storm from your house to Timbuktu. I'm not talking about that. This episode is about storm spotting, and basically with the Skywarn organization. And basically what that is just, it's a local group within your county or within your major city or whatever, that you go to one specific spot and you watch the storm. Typically this is more boring than anything, but there are those things of high excitement, I guess you could say. But typically you're going to be more bored than anything, but you're going to be looking at the sky because you are the first line of defense for pretty much anybody in your area, right? I mean, the radar can only see so low, and the farther out from the radar you are, the higher that radar beam is, so it can't see the ground level. You get out at past about I think like 10, 15 miles or so, and you're already at like 10,000 feet is what the radar beam is. So us as Skywarn spotters are the first line of defense for the community that we serve. So make sure that you're trained, make sure that you do it the right way. So first off, let's talk about your vehicle. Okay. Typically ham radio spotters, like I said, will only go maybe a few miles. You're not going to go, 100 miles, 200 miles, 400 miles a day like a storm chaser will. You're typically going to go just a few miles. And even if that, you might not even do that. You might be lucky enough to be able to storm spot from your house. Maybe you live up on top of a hill like I do, where I can see, like 300 degrees from my yard, basically. And about 180 degrees or so from my back porch. Granted, it's the wrong direction from the way that storms typically come from my back porch, but still, I have a good vantage point. I live up on top of a hill, and I have a clear line of sight. But, if you're not lucky enough to do that, typically you're only going to go a few miles from your house. So, yeah, but even if you don't, even if your net control station asks you to go someplace else in your area to follow a storm or to try and get in front of it to potentially get a better vantage point on a storm, or maybe fill in an area where there's not any spotters, then you need to make sure that you're ready. So here's a few things that you should check with your vehicle in the instance of storm spotting, right? First off, you always want to make sure that you have plenty of gas. That's probably the very most important thing that you can do with your vehicle. You don't want to have to be activated and say, oh, by the way, I have to stop at the gas station to fill up on my car. I don't like, during storm season, I don't like to go below about half a tank. And, even when it's not during storm season, I don't go below a quarter. But, definitely make sure that your fuel is, at least a half a tank or better. Preferably be topped off. If you watch the weather and they say, okay, well, there's a 80% chance of severe thunderstorms tomorrow, go ahead and fill up your tank. That way you have plenty of fuel to do whatever you need to do, because you could be sitting somewhere in your vehicle. More than likely your vehicle is going to be running, so it's going to be using gas. If your net control station asks you to go someplace, that's 10, 15 miles away, you don't want to have to stop and say, okay, I got to get gas. So make sure your fuel is topped off. And the next thing that you really need to do is make sure your lights are working. Make sure your headlights are working. Make sure your brake lights are working. If you are able to use some type of emergency lighting, like a amber beacon or, flashing lights or something like that, make sure they work properly. And these are, if you are able to have them, I think these are very good to have, because you might be sitting on the side of the road, and if you are blacked out, you're going to have, maybe somebody will hit you, maybe a cop will stop and say, hey, why are you here? And stuff like that. So if you have some kind of way of having, like an amber light, you typically don't want to go with like a red light or a blue light. But if you can go with like an amber light, that's typically, well, here in Texas, it's fine to use an amber light. Make sure that you check the laws in your state to find out if you can have them, and if so, what color you can have them. And also make sure that it can be seen from 360 degrees. That's one of the stipulations that really you should have. And here in Texas, it's the law as well. You have to be able to see any kind of emergency lights from 360 degrees. Next thing, make sure that your antennas and your coax is in good condition. You check your SWRs. Make sure they're working. Make sure there's not any frays or anything on your coax. Make sure there's good connections, that it's going to be working properly, because you don't want to be sitting out in like a tornado barreling down on you, or a tornado barreling down onto a subdivision or something like that, and trying to give a report, hey, there's a tornado coming, and not being able to hit the repeater because your antenna is not properly working. And along with that, make sure that your radio is working. Make sure that it's programmed correctly, that your the frequency of the repeater that you're going to be using is programmed incorrectly, that the tone is correct, the offset is correct, so on and so forth. More than likely, it probably will, because more than likely you're probably talking that when there's not severe weather barreling down on you. But nevertheless, make sure that your radio is working right. Make sure there's, that it powers on, that when you transmit, it doesn't power off, that it works, basically. Another thing that you really need to do is make sure you check your tires, and especially your spare tire, because if you are out spotting or something like that, or you, turn down a road that's muddy and you get stuck, or you run over a tree branch and you get a flat tire, or something along those lines, you need to make sure that your tires are good. Make sure that your spare is good, because if you blow a tire and you have to change it in the middle of the hail coming down on you, in order to get out of the way of a incoming tornado, you want to make sure that your spare is good, right? You don't want to have a flat donut or something. And on top of that, make sure that you have you have your jack. Make sure you have your lug wrench. And I would even say go one step further and make sure that you have a socket that fits the lugs on your tire and a breakaway bar, because those 4-way lug wrenches can bend, right? I mean, if you get stuck in the mud, or you're something along those lines, and you're trying to loosen that thing, it might not break, it might not do it. So get you a breakaway bar and a socket that you can easily break that, because those tires are put on with an impact wrench, an air-powered impact wrench, so they could be really tight, right? So any way that you can do to make that tire change faster is a good thing. And last but not least, for your vehicle, make sure that you have a first aid kit. Make sure it's fully stocked, and that includes a CPR pocket mask. Now, with this first aid kit, you really should be trained on some type of first aid, and definitely CPR, because you never know when you're going to need it. You might come up on an accident and it just happened, and the driver or something like that, is not breathing. So you want to make sure that you have some type of way that you can help, and that includes making sure that you know how to do CPR. And unfortunately, with the way things are nowadays, a lot of people aren't comfortable with doing the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation without some kind of barrier in between, and that's me included. I was, up until about 2-3 months ago, an EMT, and I know all the things that can be transmitted with mouth-to-mouth contact. So I always carry a pocket CPR mask in my car. It's in my door, and it's always there. So make sure you have that. Make sure you have a first aid kit. Even if it's nothing more than Band-Aids and gauze or something like that, make sure you have it. You might also look in an emergency roadside kit, with flares or emergency triangles or something like that. And last but not least, this really isn't a must, but it's probably a good thing to have. Get you some Rain-X, and this needs to be done before, not during, but before. Spray your windshield with Rain-X, because when you have that pouring down rain, it's hard enough to see through the rain. But if you have the Rain-X on your windshield prior to that, then those water drops will just bead off, and it makes it a whole lot easier to see. So that's your vehicle. We're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor before we go on to the rest of the topic. Okay, so I want to thank West Mountain Radio for sponsoring this podcast. I've used West Mountain Radio products for about 15 or so years, and by that I've used a rig blaster. These rig blasters are really awesome things. You can do a whole lot of stuff with them. You can do HF digital, you can do packet radio, you can do APRS, you can do a emergency repeater using Echolink, I believe, with it. You can do announcements for your repeater. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do with these rig blasters. They are awesome, well built, and like I said, I've been using mine for over 15 years, and it's still just ticking away. They also have what's called a rig runner, which we've talked about in previous episodes, which is basically a power distribution system as well. But really what I want to talk to y'all about is the DC to go boxes. These things are really neat things. It is a hard plastic case that has a battery in it, or that you can put a battery into, and it will protect your carpet or your wood or your floor from corrosion if something happens to the battery. Well, these DC-to-go boxes, there's two of them that are pre-made that I want to tell you all about. The first off, both of them have a Super Power Gate PG40. What this thing does is it provides a uninterruptible power supply in case you lose AC power. Basically what it is it has an input from your power supply, and it has an input from your battery, and then an output that will go to your radio or your rig blaster. And if something happens to your power supply, your power goes out, you lose your AC power, it will automatically kick over to your battery, and you'll just keep on trucking along like nothing happens. The other thing that is included with these two DC-to-go boxes is a rig runner. Now, it has two of them. One of them is a rig runner 4007U, and the other is a rig runner 4008. Both of them are awesome little things. The rig runner 4008 provides 40 amps of DC power over 8 slots. The 4007U gives you 40 amps across 7 slots. Now, there is one less slot in the 4007, but I think it's better, and let me tell you why. There's some extra features that come along with the 4007U. It has a digital load meter, a USB charging port, as well as solid-state push-button on-off switch and an automatic shut-off for high and low voltages. Both of these are mounted on the side of the battery box, and all you have to do is hook up the wire to the battery, hook it up to your the power gate and into your rig runner, and you're ready to go. These things are perfect for a backup battery for a repeater, a backup battery for your home station, or maybe even for a contest. Super easy, super awesome, and relatively cheap, really. I mean, awesome system for not a whole lot of money. The rig runner 4008 is $249.95, and the 4007U is $269.95. But if these two things don't fit what you want, you can even make a custom one. And custom, I'm talking about pretty much anything. You can put anything on this side of these boxes. I actually went through it, and you can actually put a power supply on the back side of it. So you can have one basic power unit, a power supply mounted on the back, a battery in the middle, the power gate and the rig runner on the front, and have one full self-contained power unit for your ham radio power pleasure, I guess you could say. So make sure you head over to everythinghamradio.com/WMR for information on that. And if you do, you get a free USB power monitor free with any purchase. So go to that website, everythinghamradio.com/WMR for more details on that. And once again, thank you West Mountain Radio for sponsoring this podcast. Alrighty, so back to the question, are you ready for storm season? Now, we've already talked about your vehicle. Now, let's talk about stuff on a more personal level. Okay, we're gonna talk about a Skywarn storm spotting go bag. Now, I'm not talking about a go bag that has radios in it, that has the power supply already built in, it's all rack mountable in a hard plastic case, and, it weighs 50 pounds or 150 pounds or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a small duffel bag that has some supplies in it that you will probably need for a Skywarn activation. Now, the other go boxes that we've talked about in previous episodes are more for a Races or Aries longer term activation, but we're talking about short term Skywarn. So, first and foremost, on any activation that you go to as a ham radio operator, you need to have an identification card that has your picture on it, and that has your, I think the other requirement as far as FEMA or NIMS go is it has to have your thumbprint on it, I believe, on the back of it. So, but at the very least, a photo ID. And it needs to be on a official card for your Skywarn team. Now, you might ask why. Okay, I've got my driver's license, I've got my ham radio license. Why do I need this extra identification card? Well, here's two things, okay? If for whatever reason this event goes longer than just the storm that's blowing through, and you need to get into a certain place, like a Red Cross shelter or something like that, you already have the card. And you're going to need this photo ID card with an official organization on it in order to get into these spots. So make sure that you have that. Secondly, if, let's say you're sitting on the side of the road, like I talked about earlier, and you're blacked out, or you have your four-ways on, or even your emergency lights on, and an officer stops and says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" You can say, "Well, I'm a Skywarn spotter for this county. Here's my identification card. Here's my driver's license," and they'll say, "Okay, well, have a great day." So make sure you have your identification card. Next off, make sure that you have a reflective vest. Now, the standard here recently, over the past couple of years, is a neon lime green. In the past, it was orange, but it's kind of moved over to green. So if you're going to buy a new one, make sure that you get a lime green one. Whatever the color that you have, make sure that it has some type of reflective material, not just the color. Make sure it has the reflective strips on it that will reflect vehicle lights or something on it. And this is not only for you wearing it standing out on the side of the road and the car driving by so they can see you. This is also, say, like, if bad luck happens here, knock on wood, and you get thrown by the tornado, and you're laying off in a ditch somewhere, and, search and rescue is looking for you, and they, are shining a flashlight or whatever, and they see this reflective material, they're more likely to see you if you have this vest on and if you have a reflective material built into it than they would if you didn't. So, reflective vest, definitely a must. Now, a little earlier we talked about making sure that your radio worked in your vehicle. I wanted to go one step further about it, but I didn't. I failed to do that. Shame on me. The reason I say the radio in your vehicle is because you don't ever want to talk on a handheld as your primary radio during a storm event. And the reason behind this is because even if you live, say, 3 miles from a repeater site, and typically you don't have any problems getting into the repeater on your handheld, during a lightning storm, the atmosphere can be electromagnetically charged, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and it could interrupt your signal. Now, granted, it's just 3 miles, and more than likely it probably won't happen, but if you're on maybe the outer fringes of the distance of your handheld, then it very well could. So you don't ever want to talk primarily on your handheld radio during a Skywarn activation. But that being said, you really should make sure that you have a handheld radio in your Go Pack. And the reason for this is because, if something does happen to your mobile radio while you're out storm spotting, you will have a backup radio. Also, if you step out of your vehicle for whatever reason, you have some type of communication with net control. You're not having to run back to your car to talk on the radio to call for help if you find if you find an accident or something like that, and you go and check on the person. You have your handheld there and say, "Hey, I've got this person down. Call 911 or give me an ambulance here or whatever." So, even though you shouldn't use an HT as your primary radio, you want to have an HT in your go bag. Now, along with this HT, you want to have extra batteries, because you never know how long you're going to be working on your handheld. So make sure that you have extra batteries for it. But not only extra batteries for your handheld, but you also want to have extra batteries for, say, a flashlight or a GPS unit or, your anemometer. I think that's how you say it. So make sure you have extra batteries on hand. C batteries, D batteries, probably not D because there's not really used a whole lot anymore. But make sure you have, C batteries for your flashlight. Make sure you have AA batteries for a GPS or an anemometer or even a handheld battery. So extra batteries, make sure that you have some. Next up, you should have a map. And by a map, I'm not saying a GPS in your vehicle or a APRS system or something like that. You want to make sure that you have a paper map. Now, depending on where you live or what your organization uses, is what you should do. Here in where I live, here in Johnson County in Texas, we use a MapsCo. And that way it's standardized for everybody. It has grid squares on it where we can report to the National Weather Service and say, hey, we're in grid square, 3 Alpha Charlie or something like that. And they'll know, within a quarter mile of where I'm sitting at on that map. Now, you can take it one step further, but make sure that you have a paper map with you at all times. The next step up would be to have a APRS unit, or at the very least a GPS unit. Now, if your area has a APRS network already established, I would definitely go with an APRS tracker. They're really relatively cheap. You can buy a pocket tracker through Bionics for I think like $200 or something like that, and it's a fully self-sufficient APRS tracker. It has an antenna on it. It has a rubber duck antenna that you can buy with it, but you can stick a mag mount on it. It has the GPS built in, or comes with it anyways, where you can plug it into it. Plug it into your cigarette lighter plug, and away you go. You have your APRS. If you have it built into your mobile radio, make sure it's activated. And the reason behind this is because you want to make sure that you have that your net control station can see where you are at all times. If like I said, if your local area has an APRS network already established, it's great to have, because you have your your net control can see where you are at all times. National Weather Service can see where you are, where you're giving the report at, and you don't have to say, well, I'm on John Road 3/4 of a mile east of Dixie Street or something like that. So if you have APRS capabilities, definitely use it. But at the very least, have a GPS. And I'm not saying a nav system in your car. Even the nav systems are great to have, because it will show you where you are in relationship to the roads that you're traveling on, the roads that are coming up that you might need to turn on, or whatever. Those are great. But when it comes to giving a exact location to somebody of a structure fire or a accident or whatever, if you have a GPS unit, you can say, well, I'm at coordinates XY, and there is a grass fire here or whatever. So hard copy map, always have in your vehicle. APRS, if your area has an APRS network already established, and at the very least a GPS. If your local area does not have an APRS established, maybe you can be the person to spearhead the development of one for next storm season. Next up, and this kind of goes along with your reflective vest, you want to have a raincoat. It seems pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people leave without a raincoat or don't have a raincoat in their go pack. Now, a raincoat obviously going to keep you dry. You have typically your cell phone in your pocket. You're going to have your handheld on your belt or on your pocket or wherever. And you want to make sure that stays dry. If you happen to get out in the rain for whatever reason, say you're changing a tire, you have your raincoat. That way you don't get totally soaked on it. And this can be even just as simple as one of those little dollar one-time use raincoat things that come in a little like 3-inch by 4-inch package, and you unfold it. You don't have to go all out. Just something to help protect you and your equipment from the elements if something happens and you have to go out of your vehicle. Next up, you want to make sure that you have a flashlight. Now, this again may seem pretty obvious, but you would be surprised how many people don't have flashlights in their vehicle. And you can go just a small mag light that that you can wear on your belt, to a larger mag light or an LED light, or even if you wanted to go as far as having a charging station / holder permanently mounted in your vehicle. I don't know how many of y'all have actually seen the inside of like a cop car or a fire truck or something like that, but they have those built in and mounted permanently in their vehicles. And you can do this as well. And this not only will be helpful during a Skyward event, but just in your everyday life. If you get out of your vehicle and it's pitch black around you or whatever, reach down, grab your flashlight. It's always going to be charged and always going to be ready to go. So, I don't think they're very much more expensive. I haven't looked at it yet. This has been one heck of a week for me, but if you can get one that's permanently mounted and always charging, hooked up to your car battery, definitely make sure and get that. But at the very least, have a mag light or some kind of flashlight with you in case you need it, because you never know when you're going to need it. Next off, make sure that you have a spare charging cord for your phone. Now, typically you're probably going to have one already in your vehicle, but it's a good thing to have an extra one in your go pack. And you probably will have one in your car, but let's say that this Skyward event follows over into an Aries event, and you're stuck at a Red Cross shelter or something like that, and you haven't charged your phone in a long time, and it's getting at like 5%. What are you going to do? You're not going to have your cell phone anymore. So make sure you have a spare cord in your go pack as well. Not only that, but if something happens for whatever reason to the charging cord in your car, you have a spare. A little old school here, but you also should make sure you have a compass. Because it's easy to get turned around when you're storm spotting, especially when you're driving, going to a different location. It's easy to get turned around and say, okay, which direction is north, or which direction is the storm coming from? And this is especially true at night. When you can't see the landmarks of an area that you're used to. So have a regular compass. A $5 compass from Walmart or something like that. That way you can take it out and you can say, okay, well, that direction is southeast and that's where the storm's coming from. So guess what? If everybody in the Northwest, get ready. The next thing is a handheld anemometer. These things used to be on the expensive side and not necessarily hard to come by, but typically more for the storm chaser, I guess you could say, maybe, or those that could spend a little bit more money on a handheld device that you might use once or twice a year. But now they're really relatively cheap. I found one on Amazon yesterday for about $20, and I'll put a link in the show notes of some anemometers for you to check out. So, and like I said, they will be affiliate links as well, so I will get a small finder's fee. But if you have, or if you can buy this anemometer, it's a whole lot better to be able to say, okay, this is K5CLM, I'm at such and such location, and I have wind out of the north measured at 30 miles an hour. That's a whole lot better to say than I have winds out of the north at about 40 miles an hour. You're looking at a 10 miles per hour higher, which typically is no real big deal. But the cutoff for a severe thunderstorm warning is 60 miles an hour. So if you are sitting somewhere and you have, okay, I have a measured wind reading of 60 miles an hour or 65 miles an hour, they can say, okay, well, this, that meets the criteria of a severe thunderstorm. Let's go ahead and put out the warning. Whereas if you say, okay, well, I have winds out of the north, and it looks like it's going to be about 50 miles an hour or so. When it's actually 60, 65 miles an hour. So that it could affect things like that. So, like I said, $20, relatively cheap now. Amazing what the advances in technology has given us. So if at all possible, get one of those and, get a measured wind reading anywhere that you are. Last but not least, what we're going to talk about is a spotting cheat sheet. Now, most of the time you'll get these whenever you go to your Skywarn school. They'll have, at least here, they have it on a 11 by 14 piece of paper, and it has different, hail sizes, a quarter instead of a marble, or a pea size, or whatever, in the different diameters, so you can hit cheat sheet. Okay, well, that's about this size, that's the size of a pea, that's what I'm going to use. Whereas, you get, this is a quarter size, not a marble size, because the marble size can be so many different sizes, right? Also, cheat sheet has like wind speed estimations. If it's bending over a 1.5-inch tree, then the wind's blowing approximately 60 miles an hour. Stuff like that. So make sure you get a spotting cheat sheet from your local Skywarn organization or your National Weather Service. Typically you get those at Skywarn School. If you don't have one, try and find one. Talk to some of the other hams, talk to the other Skywarn people, and maybe they can get you a copy of it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If there's anything that I have not mentioned in today's episode that you feel should be in there, or you would like to share with everybody, please leave a comment in the section below in the show notes. Again, you can find those at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/55. So let's go ahead and get on to our upcoming events of today's episode. Alrighty, so all the times that are going to be given in these events are in UTC time. So make sure you adjust accordingly. So first off, February the 11th from 0000 hours to the 12th at 23:59, we have the CQWW RTTYWPX contest. That's a lot of letters. Also on the 11th from 1000 hours to 1000 hours on the 12th is the SARL Field Day contest. On February the 11th from 1100 to 1300 is the Asia Pacific Spring Sprint on CW. February the 11th from 1200 to the 12th at 1200 is the Dutch Pack contest. Same time is the KCJ Top Band contest. And from 1200 hours on the 11th to 2400 hours on the 12th is the SKCC Weekend Sprintathon. February the 11th from 1500 to 1500 hours on the 12th is the Ole Miss QSO Party. February the 11th from 1600 to 2200 hours on the 12th is the New Hampshire QSO Party. February the 11th from 1700 to 2100 hours is the FIST Winter Unlimited Sprint. February the 11th from 2300 hours to 2300 hours on the 12th is the AWA Amplitude Modulation QSO Party. There's a lot of QSO parties going on the 11th and 12th, so there you go. If you want to get on the air and make some context, there is several things going on this day. On the 12th, we have the Balkan HF contest from 1200 hours to 1800 hours. On the 13th, we have the CQC Winter QSO Party from 100 hours to 259. And February 13th from 1300 hours to 2359 on February the 17th, that's a full week, is the ARRL School Club Roundup. February 14th from 00 hours to 2359 is the PODXS070 Club Valentine Sprint. They're on Valentine's Day. For all y'all married guys out there, you probably will be participating in this. I would hope that you would take your wife out to something nice for Valentine's Day. And if you haven't got her a Valentine's gift yet, get on the ball. It's coming up really fast. Let's see. February 15th from 1900 hours to 2030 is the AGCW Semi-Automatic Key Evening. February 15th from 2000 hours to 2130 is the RSGB 80 meter club championship on data. The 18th from 0 hours to the 19th at 2400 hours is the ARRL International DX contest for CW. The 18th from 0 to 2400 hours on the 26th is the Novice Rig Roundup. On the 18th from 800 hours to 1000 hours is the SARL Youth Day Sprint. On the 18th from 1200 hours to the 19th at 11:59 is the Russian PSKWW contest. The 18th from 1900 hours to 20:59 is the Feld Hell Sprint. The 20th from 200 to 400 hours is the Run for the Bacon QRP contest. And last but not least, February 22nd from 0 hours to 200 hours is the SKCC Sprint. All the information was taken from the WA7BNM contest calendar, which you can find a link to in the show notes of today's episode. Alright, so let's move on to the hamfests. Alright, so we have quite a few hamfests coming up over the next 2 weeks. Not so much this weekend, but the following weekend. There's quite a few of them. So let's get started. On the 10th, we have the Southeastern Division Convention Orlando Hamcation in Orlando, Florida. On the 11th, we have the Swap and Shop in Transverse City, Michigan. On the 17th, the following Friday, is the Arizona Section Convention Yuma Hamfest in Yuma, Arizona. On the 18th, we have several. First off, we have the Algonquin ARC Ham Radio Flea Market in Marlborough, Massachusetts. We have the Arkansas Section Convention LCARC Winterfest in Hoxie, Arkansas. We have the Brooksville Hamfest in Brooksville, Florida. The Brownsburg Hamfest in Brownsburg, Indiana. And Cabin Fever Reliever Hamfest, I like that name, in St. Joseph, Minnesota. Let's see. Next up, we have the Highlands County Hamfest in Sebring, Florida, and the Salem Ham Fair in Rick Reel, Oregon. On the 19th, we have the 46th annual Lavanya ARC Swap and Shop in Lavanya, Michigan. We have the Mansfield Midwinter Hamfest in Mansfield, Ohio. And last but not least, we have the Swap Fest in Brighton, Colorado. All the information on these Hamfests were taken from the ARRL Hamfest calendar. So next up, we have a couple news things. So let's see. First up in our news, for all of y'all DIYers out there, all of y'all builders and designers out there, last week we talked about antenna design. Well, this week I saw a article on the ARRL newsfeed where there is a upcoming competition, the QST antenna design competition, that is. ARRL members are invited to submit entries for the 2017 QST antenna design competition. There are 3 categories you can enter: 160 meters, low frequency and very low frequency, 80 meters through 10 meters, and 6 meters to higher bands. There's only 1 entry per person or team, so make sure you choose wisely on which category you're going to be building it on. The deadline for it is June 1st, 2017. First place winners in each category will receive $500. Second and third place for each category will receive $250 and $100 respectively. Winning designs will also be eligible for publication in the QST magazine. Entries must include a drawing with dimensions. Hand drawings are acceptable. A list of materials required to build the antenna. A description and summary of any measurements taken, including SWR data. Photographs of installed antennas. The entry category you choose for your design. Your name, mailing address, and email address. Again, only 1 entry per individual or team is accepted. Entrants must be ARRL members. ARRL headquarters staff and QST advertisers are not eligible. Send your entry to QST Attention Antenna Design Competition 225 Main Street in Newington, Connecticut 06111, or simply mail your entry to qst@arrl.org. The subject line should include your call sign and the words Antenna Design Competition. You can find complete rules on the ARRL website. So last year, 2016, was an outstanding year for amateur radio licensing. So says the ARRL VEC manager Maria Soma, AB1FM. New amateur radio licenses issued were up by 1% over 2015, and this is the third year in a row that the total number of new licenses is expected to be over 30,000 people. Soma reported, she said 32,552 were granted in 2016, 32,077 in 2015, and 33,241 in 2014. So it's actually gone down since 2014, but still big numbers. Soma said that while 2014 was a record-setting year for new licenses issued, the ARRL VEC continues to see an elevated interest in obtaining amateur radio licenses. The overall trend continues to be up. The total number of U.S. amateur radio licenses has continued to grow each year since the FCC eliminated the Morse code exam requirement in 2007. Over the past decade, the net number of amateur radio licensees has risen to nearly 87,000 people, according to statistics compiled by Joe Spiranon, AH0A, who is the ARRL Pacific Section Manager. As of December 31st, 2016, the total number of licensees in the FCC database was 742,787 people, topping the 2015 total of 735,405, but down just slightly from the all-time high of 743,003 people that was reached last November. Some said license upgrades were down 5% compared to 2015, only 10,617 versus 11,224. A new amateur extra class took effect on July 1st, 2016, which may have impacted upgrade totals in the second half of the year. As of December 31st, according to the figures compiled by Spiranon, there are 143,337 amateur extra licensees, including yours truly, 45,071 advanced licensees, 172,807 general class licensees, and 371,560 technician class and 10,012 novice licensees. The FCC no longer issues advanced or novice class licenses. The general and technician licenses totals at the end of the year were at all-time high, and the amateur extra total was nearly so. So that's a lot of technicians, guys. 371 plus thousand. That's awesome. Even 143,000 extras. Wow, a lot of people. But that's awesome. That goes to show you what amateur radio is all about. People wanting to come in, wanting to find something better than CB or FRS radio or something like that. There's so many aspects of this hobby that people are coming here by the droves, I guess you could say. So, yeah. So all y'all volunteer examiners out there, pat yourself on the back for all the new hams that you brought in. This year, I think I've helped license about 15 or so, if I'm not mistaken. We do a class the first couple months of every year, typically, and anytime we have some, 5 or 6 people that want to take the class, we'll go ahead and put it on as well. But I think I've given about 15 tests this year, and most of those were new licensees. I think I had a couple upgrades as well. So, yeah, congratulations to all y'all VEs out there. Keep up the good work and keep on trucking. So I guess that pretty much wraps up this episode. So again, question is, are you ready for storm season? Make sure that you are. Don't put yourself out there in a place that you might regret. Been there, done that. So, also congratulations to Alan Meeker, KM4ZLD, for winning the N3FJP Software Package. Also, I need Eric Broyles. I don't have his name in front of me. I'm sorry about that. But the winner of the KJ4KEU ebooks. Make sure both y'all shoot me an email, k5clm@everythinghamradio.com, with your address on there so I can get y'all set up to get these prizes. Well, that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. I want to thank you for stopping by and listening to this episode. If you like what you heard here on this episode, please share it with your friends. And if you would like to support this podcast, there are several ways you can do it. Like I mentioned up at the top of the show, you can make a one-time contribution through PayPal. You can become a per-episode contributor through Patreon, or simply shop through my Amazon affiliate links. All the information on how to do this is on my support page, which you can find at everythinghamradio.com/support. If you have not done so already and would like to subscribe to my email list to get emails on when I publish a new podcast, simply go to everythinghamradio.com/subscribe, or fill out the email sign up link at the bottom of the show notes. I will not send out a whole bunch of emails. Typically, it will just be new episode reminders or notifications, so to speak. We'll send out a couple every now and then, but not very much. So you're not going to get a whole bunch of spam from me, I promise. And I will not sell your email list, so your email is safe with me. I hate spam as much as the next person, trust me. Also, please follow me on Facebook. You can find me at facebook.com/everythinghamradio. I also have a Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. You can follow me on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio, and on Twitter at K5CLM. Links to all these and as other social media sites that I post on the social menu bar at the top of the page. I guess that pretty much wraps it up. Again, thank you very much for stopping by, and I guess until next time, this is K5CLM signing out. 73, y'all.